Right. This is quite a common thing when you see people doing demos or sort of more formal. They'll talk about the shapes, finding the big shapes. They'll say, and which is right. That's part of it. It's not all of it, but it's part of it. And the for instance on this image, you can see the shapes that are there. You can see. The thing is that from my point of view, I always think of I call it shape isolation. So I'll isolate shapes even though they've got things within them. This almost diamond-like shape on the front of a face is one big shape when I isolate that shape. Not concerned with what's in between it. I'm just concerned with that shape there. Normally, people would say, "There's the shapes. There's the shapes." They might do that to isolate that shape there, and they might do that there. So you start to sort of fragment the thing into these almost like painting by numbers shapes. That's not really what I'm talking about. This is when you're drawing. Let me just work out this is going to fit on the paper. This is quite a nice image, so I'm probably going to give it the full the full Monty. We did this last night. I think this is another one of those. A nice kind of narrative, almost painting image. I think, and this one I've got here is the same kind of thing. So I want to follow it through if you like. If you know what I mean. I won't be just doing it now. But anyway, as far as I said, most people are going to tell you, right, you're going to do the big shapes, which is this, and often it's quite mechanical. So they do, because it's in a way they've got to define them as boxes, squares, triangles, whatever, rectangles. That's not the case. These shapes are none of those things. These are not your normal shapes. And the problem with talking about shapes in that respect is the same problem as talking about eyes and nose and all the rest of it. You know what a triangle is. You draw a triangle without looking at it, which is why if we've done the starting from zero thing, that there is one test within that, which is a square, a triangle, and a circle. And I want you to draw it without thinking of it as a square, triangle, and a circle, because you have to get past this thing of assumption. It's a triangle, and then you don't look at the subject, you don't look at the reference. It's got to be a case of whatever that shape is there. That's what you have to identify, and then translate. I won't say copy because it's not what you're going to do. You're going to try and sort of respond to it at the same time. So it gets kind of complicated when it's more than just a sort of a set of boundaries that define some kind of thing, whether it be a socket or a cheekbone or a nose or whatever it might be. But during the process of drawing it, and it goes all the way through, even with on that one I've just shown you we did last night. It goes all the way through it all the time. You're looking to isolate, to see the shapes. So, and when sometimes the students will say, they've lost it or whatever, I always say, go back to the big shapes. Go back to the shapes that define, and it may be the shape that defines the whole of the face. It may be the whole thing, but always go back to that shape and then come back in again. So, because you can't fix it from the inside out. If the eye socket isn't quite right, or how you imply the eye socket or the eyelid isn't quite right, it's not that's going to fix it, because it may well be that it's in the wrong place and it hasn't got the right kind of relationship to the objects around it. So I always say, go back to the beginning and then come back into it. Invariably, that will fix it. But as I said, it's all about seeing the shapes. It's all about seeing and isolating those shapes. So to start with, I'm not. The first thing is not shapes for me. The first thing is where's the corner of that nose there? Where's that eye there? These are the things that I'm concerned with to start with. I'm not concerned about whether or not that kind of shape's there, because I'm gonna use these anchors to actually then to develop the shapes. But I need to know where they are first of all. I can't just draw a shape in it. I need to pinpoint things. It's a bit of a for me, it's a bit more of a focused development. Of course, the other thing as well is that even though I kind of talk about shapes being the objective, in a way, how I find those shapes is using what you see me doing now, which is to apply some kind of tone to it, some kind of hatching or scribble or whatever you want to call it, just so that I can see that the definition of that shape is right. It's only because I can see better. It's the line thing. If you were just doing, sometimes you'll see me doing the lines, but the whole point of the line thing is to make a point. I want people to sort of say, you don't have to commit to anything particularly complicated in order to begin the process of finding the face. But generally I will put tone on like that, just because that gives me a better idea of the relationship of things, and invariably there are shapes involved in that as well. There's a shape that's there. I'm not really bothered what shape, whether it's accurate or not, or whatever. It is the shape that's there. The same as the lips are there. There's a shape there. Whether it's accurate or not at the moment, I'm not really bothered. I just know it's there. There's this, and there's a shape there at the end of a chin, and so on and so forth. And it's that. I'm just identifying the shapes with tones, but it's seeing the shapes that is the critical thing. So for instance, with that eye, if I look at that eye now, my visual comparison is saying what's the distance from there to there, and what's the distance from, say, the underlid, the under eye, there to where the eyebrow is. But generally, I'm looking at a shape that's doing that. So I'm seeing as I'm looking at all the distances. I'm also looking at the relationships. I'm also looking at the general shape, the overall shape of that socket there. That's what I'm looking at. So it's the dots, it's the shapes within those, attached to those dots, but then it's sort of the major shapes of the areas that say surround things like the eyes, and also then you've got this shape in relation to this shape, because there's a shape there, and so there's a distance from there to there on the eyebrow. How does that relate to that to there, which is then going to impact on the shape that the size of the shape that I'm drawing within it. So it is a complete, you're seeing the shapes all the time, or trying to see the shapes all the time, and that happens all the way through the process. It can't just be find them and color them in. It can't just be like that. It can if it's a more mechanical approach, but if you're working freehand, you have to have this evolutionary development type of approach to it. It's just going to grow in front of you. That's what's going to happen. It's just going to grow as you're drawing it. It shouldn't really be focused on one thing like that. The whole thing should be, as I'm looking at all these shapes and I'm looking for these relationships and the way that things are working together, I should be doing this to find all the full face. Really, you shouldn't really just be drawing parts of the face. Drawing all of the face is what we try and do, so that it can be, you can see you get a better, because this eye socket shape here, just as that eye socket shape there is related to the shape of that one there, this eye socket is also in relation to, say, the thickness of the hair there, that how far that is there. So all of these things, without having all these things, then you're not going to get a complete picture, if you like. You only work on certain parts of it at certain times. It has to be everything relates to everything. That's a given, I suppose. When it's when we're drawing things, everything relates to everything. So you need to be drawing the whole thing. And seeing the shapes at the same time, as I say, because it's otherwise you're just going to fall into the trap of proportions will be out, and you just haven't got the sizes right and all the rest of it, because you focus too soon on one of the elements of it. In fact, I think I said yesterday about one of the students who did exactly that and focused too early on certain things that he wasn't ready to focus on. There are times when you do. I mean, obviously, when you get to a point where you feel things are in the right place, then you can then start to focus on, the glasses or the eye socket or the mouth or whatever it is. But not until you're happy with all the shapes and how all these things relate to each other. And once you've got to that point, then obviously you can just calm down. In fact, that's what happened last night. We did the sort of general shape thing, which is what we're doing now, and then got into things like this. Because one of the things I said at the time when we were drawing it was this, because she's got this blouse on. So at the first, when we got all the shapes in place, I didn't bother with the inner darks on the headscarf. Didn't bother with the blouse or any of these things. Not important. What was important was getting all the shape elements in there, and then sort of focusing on the tonal aspects of that. Because this, if nothing else, these kind of narrative paintings, charcoal paintings, you like, have. You have got a level of tonal sophistication in these things. They're not your sort of floating head things. A standard floating head, if I've got anywhere this kind of thing, a standard floating head is going to be just a floating head. It still has all the the complications of the tones and things, but it's not the same as this. This is about getting, I mean, especially with something like this, this is about getting the I forgot which charcoal I was using now. This is about getting all the elements, because this element here and the things on the shelves here and the darkness across the top there, and then the way the light casts across there, all of these things are part of this face. They're not, it's not just that bit there. So but I'm not going to focus on any of those things until I've got all the shapes in the right place. So, which again, this is what it is. It's about seeing these things. Because when I'm drawing this bit here, I've got a scarf that drops down there. We've got the top of a blouse there, and I've got to estimate from there to there. So that's what I've got to. And alignment is probably about there in a vertical alignment. But I've got to estimate the distance from there to there, and that I can only do that by this kind of comparison. But that's the shapes, building the shapes, seeing the shapes. There's a shape there, but I need to know, and this is back to the points thing. I need to know exactly where that starts. So seeing the points, first of all, seeing the dots, first of all, and using those to anchor where the shapes are going to be is part of the process. But it's really is. A lot easier if you focus on the shapes as opposed to individual elements. Trying to draw outlines of eyes and things is always going to be a harder way to do it. It's still doable. Everybody does it. Well, I'm saying everybody, but a lot of people do it that way, and successful people do it that way, and it's probably a more academic way of doing things. People have criticised me because of this kind of looser approach, but in the traditional way, they probably do it as outlines and then color it in. But from my point of view, it's the shapes and the tones. I mean, as I said, once I've located them, it's shapes and tones that I'm drawing. I'm not drawing outlines which I'm going to color in later. It's not, for me, that's not how it works. So I have to work with shapes. I think also one of the things that I like things to look like drawings, but I also don't like them to look like outlines that are coloured in. There's a kind of fine balance between the two, I think. This is why I like suggestion and implication. On say things like last night's, there's a lot of suggestion and implication on that. So I'm suggesting and implying a lot of things rather than drawing specific outlines of eyes or the mouth. There's just shadows and shapes that are defining those things. The trick with something like this is the tones. It's just to get the tonal balance right. Now, this is not about values. This thing about understanding values and value scales and how to use values to create volume and form and all that, that's fine if you're doing things out of your head. You don't need to know those things. You just need to be able to see. If you can see, and you can see the tones, that's what you're going to draw. You don't need to know how the light hits a nose, for instance, and that is the way, in the same way as it would hit a ball, or the ball would then, have these midtones and all the rest of it. That is all necessary stuff. You don't need that. You just need to be able to see. And if you can see, I mean, obviously you're working from reference or you're working from a subject, but for me, that is what artists do. We respond to. I know a lot of artists will create things, and maybe like my son, you're a surrealist, and you create something that weird and wonderful. But for me, it's my response to the world. That's what it is. So I'm responding to what I see, both emotionally and visually. So that really is the goal with this, to find these shapes, to find the things that define the elements, and really, and at the same time, strangely enough, when there's the dots you'd use to find the locations of where shapes begin or where they locate. But at the same time as I'm looking for, say, this shape here that is part of the hair, which is probably going to get a little bit of fudging and smudging and lots of work with the rubber on it. But as I'm looking at those kind of shapes, the reverse happens to the dot thing. Because now when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at where the top of that curl is, the top of that curl there. So I'm still looking to locate with some kind of mark to say that it's there. Again, this is all dependent on your observational skills. So whatever you do learn to to improve your. And the only way to learn really is to draw. Not to draw quickly, not to draw many times, not to do any of the sort of usual stuff. Just draw. And funnily enough, if you connect with it properly, and that means zero expectations, no pressure, all the sort of things that we put ourselves under, gotta go. You just draw, regardless, kind of thing. Who cares how it turns out? That kind of approach. If you do that, you will learn to see much more accurately. Also, if you don't draw the thing, I say this many times, don't draw the same thing twice. It's not healthy to do that. It's not healthy for your psyche. It promotes a certain kind of approach, which is not healthy if you want to rapidly increase your drawing skills, and get past the drawing skill thing, because that's one of the things you've got to do. This is not about how skillful you are with the graphite and how you can blend this and blend that. This is not about that. This is about so much more than that. And until you can get past that, it will always just be drawing. It's got to be more than just replication. And then when you get past it, your drawings change. All of a sudden they're full of life, and that's ultimately what you're after. But if you focus on the right kind of things, as I said, think of seeing shapes, think of seeing locations of things and relationships of things. If you do all of that, everything changes. Somebody just asked me about doing a painting demonstrations, and I was thinking about doing either watercolor or oils. The thing is that if you can draw, you can paint. Because I saw something the other day talking about a famous portrait artist, and she was saying that, she does demos, and she said it was a color demo she'd done or something like that, and she said, this is not what I do when I'm really painting, because when I'm painting, I'm drawing. So she's constantly thinking about drawing, and that's it. That's really what it is, because the skills that you employ to draw are the observational skills, and they're all about comparisons of locations of things and the relationship of things. But that in turn is the same skill you'd use to work out the colors, to see the color that's on the underneath her eye there, to the color change there. You would see those in the same way that you see the locations on. So it's still drawing, even though you're just you're painting. It's the same thing. So you use the same skills. That's what she meant when she said that she's thinking about drawing when she's painting, and that's it. So I'm in a quandary as to whether or not I should do a painting thing, because I've got students that want to paint, but the problem is they can't draw. So until they can draw, they can't paint. And I know I've heard this with like the sort of the Florence schools when they talk about you're just drawing for the first year, you never even touch color, and I can understand that because they're trying to get people to understand the importance of drawing in the sense that it's a observation and response kind of thing. It's not about the see that where they fall down is that they turn it into a draftsmanship thing. It's not about that. It's not about how well you can wield a pencil. Drawing's much more than that. It's the observational thing and the response thing that's the important thing about drawing. But until you can do that, until you can respond and observe and respond, and whatever motivates the response, until you can do that, then you wouldn't touch paint. As I said, that's not their way. They've got the right idea, but they're not they're doing it the wrong way around. It's just about draftsmanship for them. For me, it's more than draftsmanship. It's about accurate observation. So that's it. If anything, and obviously I talk about the early stages and the early starts and all that kind of thing, the initial starts. At the same time as doing all that, to be able to see the shapes, to see, for instance, when I'm getting to this point where I'm looking to see if this is right, I isolate that shape there in my mind. I'm just isolating that shape to see whether or not that's the right shape. And then I'll isolate that shape to see whether, and I might even do it just locally to see if that shape's right or the eye's right. So seeing the shapes is critical. But it's not, as I said, it's not they're not geometrical shapes. They're just the shapes that make up this one thing. And that's the thing. Don't get stuck on the breaking the shape down in the face into squares and circles and all that kind of stuff, because that again is as damaging as considering the nose. And I'm about to draw the nose. They're all sort of regurgitated knowledge, which you're then going to replicate in the face. And this face doesn't look like any other face. That eye socket is not like any other eye socket. So no amount of knowledge is going to improve your ability to observe and respond to that face, to that eye socket. You just need to be able to look better, to be able to see better. So and that's it. I say I'm going to spend time on this and turn it into a full blown sort of charcoal painting thing. But at the moment, you can see what I'm doing. I'm pushing things around a bit. So these lines are not hard and fast just yet. They're all a bit, at any one time, they could be somewhere else kind of thing, or tweaked to one side or something. So interestingly though, the white of the eye is grey, right? And if I leave it as white, then I can't make an accurate judgment as to whether or not it's in the right place. But when that becomes dark or grey as it is now, and I can make it slightly lighter, when it becomes a little bit, as I say, more grey, or it becomes grey, everything else around the eye suddenly starts to make sense to me, because and the relationships of everything is better. It's a bit like that bit there. If I make that dark too soon, then it will throw the way I see everything else. So I've got to be careful as I build these tones. This is why I use tones to find shapes, but I also use it as a way of building the tones. So I arrive at the tonal values as opposed to being there straight away, because again this is about the evolution of drawing, and because I'm pushing things around, I don't want to commit to anything at the moment. I just want to be able to just tweak things and just make it slightly darker on there. It may well transpire that I'll leave it like that it does what it needs to do. Last night's drawing, there's lots of that where you can see I've just left it as it is because it's doing what it needs to do. That's another thing. I can't really. It is shape related in a way. Everything's related, but doing enough is a big thing for me. Is that enough to communicate that, that element. Is that, have I done enough with that? And you don't know that unless you can approach this in a much more freer way than you normally do it, because so often, is that enough is not a question you're gonna ask. It'll be, I want to make this more detailed. I've seen it more detailed. Or you've got a habit of making things too detailed. So you will never ask yourself, have I done enough? It will always be about meeting some predetermined standard, which is, it's a bad thing. That's a terrible thing. Standards that you impose on yourself are so damaging. And this is the expectations thing, because you'll just expect it to be that good. It'll drive your during the process of doing this, if you're constantly looking to see whether that's good enough, or not, that it meets this criteria that you've already pre-established, it affects everything. It affects the way you make marks, and the problem is that it doesn't allow you any room for the kind of the unexpected, the bits that really communicate the essence of what you're trying to do without any effort. There might be just a mark, or there might be just a smudge or something. You could never be in that position where you can make that decision, and people will call it being loose and expressive and all that kind of thing. But you could never be in that position whilst ever you've got this criteria, this predetermined criteria of how it will end up, the outcome will be. So it's very hard. It's hard to get rid of the internal expectation thing. It's not something that is I suppose spoke about. Everybody determined, I'm going to draw portraits, and then they look at excuse me, they look at portraits that some great artists have done, and that becomes their yardstick. That becomes their aim. They call that inspiration, which is a bad thing. You shouldn't really be doing that. To see what's possible is a great thing, but to try and emulate what's possible or what somebody else has done is a bad thing. So, inspiration can be a very detrimental thing. It's about admiration and not about inspiration. You've got to admire these great artists, but that's what they do. They don't know what you're capable of, and you don't know what you're capable of. So you got to be careful with the inspiration thing. So, but as I said, that is the foundation of this expectations that you place on yourself. So, that's not including external expectations. What the teacher or the group that you're involved with expect of you, or what your gallery expects of you, and all those sort of things. Those are external expectations. Again, you should never be involved with. It's like competitions. Never get involved in competitions. Not a good idea. Not unless you're of a certain type. I mean, I hate them. As I've said many times, competitions are for athletes, not artists. So in terms of expectations, mine are really number one, to enjoy doing it, and the second one is that I capture the essence of a face. That's my expectation. That I will expect to capture that, and that I won't do it. It won't be laboured. It'll be fresh, and it'll be alive. It won't be something that I'm going to spend weeks over to do it, because it needs to be this kind of. You see, the thing, I always think that things that take a long time to do maybe a sign of somebody's having the wrong expectations, because what is it that's making them? I mean, obviously there are people working certain styles that take a long time to do, and that's a different thing. But when it's something like, say, a charcoal, why would it take weeks to do a charcoal? More often than not, because they put themselves under terrible pressure to meet a standard. it's all a bit, I say, it's all a bit unnecessary, really. That there's no reason for it to be like that. The thing about it is that once you've got the basics nailed down, which is this. Well, the only one basic you need to nail down really is your observational skills. But let's say you get past that, and really, manifesting that in terms of, say, the dots and the square and the shapes, and then the tones. Once you get those kind of under your belt, and it's not complicated, any of that. This is not, the usual sort of complicated way of approaching things. But once you've got those under your belt, everything else is just fun. Every mark that you make is just fun, because you've already done the basic stuff of building the right foundation of it. You haven't dived straight into drawing it, for instance, or trying to draw the eye, as I was doing early on, and it just opens up so much potential, and I think that among of all the things that I talk about, the potential that we all have to create something great is phenomenal. And I the reason why I'm kind of so insistent on this much more relaxed approach is because I think people are not getting, they're not manifesting their potential, and they're missing out. And that's the sadness of it. So I tend to, as you see, I sort of break it down to simple and not uncomplicated things, just simply because I want other people to appreciate, their full potential. I think that's the thing. But yeah. So as I say, I'm gonna turn this into a charcoal painting, but I'm just sort of tweaking everything now. And one of the things I tend to do early on as well is, in terms of the shapes side of things, I will amalgamate or reduce the shapes where I can. So if things are of a similar tonal value, then they become one. I mean, I know all this is going to be dark and whatever, but at the moment I'm just letting things attach themselves, so they become, because to some extent, sometimes when I'm drawing the chin and the cheek and the neck, and they'll become one thing anyway, because I always say to the student, if the tones are so close to each other that they're indistinguishable, just make them one big shape. There's not, the viewer can differentiate. You can put a highlight under the chin there, but let the viewer take part in this process, and they'll differentiate and do the heavy lifting kind of thing. Anyway, so as I say, I'm going to turn this into a full blown. Now I've got the things in the right place. I'm going to use a specially selected wand. It looks like a wand, doesn't it? Wobbly that is. I'm just starting to make some more at the moment, but I've got a lot of bendy pieces at the moment, so it takes some. It takes some. There's another piece there. Look, it takes some doing to work with the bendy piece, which is why I've been using the small ones, because obviously these thick ones don't bend. But I'm going to tighten everything up on here. One of the things that going back to the relationship things, it's the size of the eye, for instance. There, the distance from the corner of that, the side of the eye to the corner of the eye there, and then to where the nose is, and then other things as well that I'm going to look at, the sort of size of the cheek there and the size of the mouth. There will be a shape that I need to see in there as well. So, but that's basically how it is. The thing is, once you've got the simple things in place, the distance is right, and you've got all those sort of things nailed down, you can just take as long as you like with it, and you can just have fun with it, which is what, as I said, we did with the shawl on the woman, or the blouse on the woman. The scarf will be the same thing on this. But interestingly, though, in terms of the shapes, as I just glanced there, the shapes that I'm seeing is all of this shape here that sort of comes down here. I mean, I know none of those shapes really are connected, but there is a tonal relationship in those shapes down there. So as it comes down here and it goes back up there, it goes up there and it goes around there, and that all of that is a shape to me. So there's no boundaries to what you identify as a shape. And the thing is that by seeing these shapes like that, you're improving the accuracy of your portraits because you're seeing the overall relationships, the relationships between here and between down there, where a blouse is between there and there, you're seeing. So seeing everything as one big shape also helps. And then you can just do a smaller one, which is like this one. It's like this one here. It goes like that. So all the time, isolating the shapes, it does help. But like I say, it's something you've got to get used to doing. I don't know whether or not it's a squinting thing. I always think it's more of a glancing thing. So when I glance at the thing, I see things. I see only certain elements, and that's what I'm representing. When I'm squinting at it, I'm not sure. I'm trying to squint now, and I don't really see. I don't see anything different when I squint. But when I glance at it, when I'm backwards and forwards, I can see definite shapes. So yeah, I'm just going to carry on with this, and I might come back on and show you what it looks like later. Last night's was a two-parter, so we did it in 2 hours. So it was the first 1 hour was to get to this stage, a bit further than this, but to get to this stage, and then the second hour was to finish it off, to take it to the next stage. So because I don't think you can just sit and do that and sort of. You'd have to watch me doing it, and that's never any fun, is it? You want to do it yourself. You don't want to be watching something. This is not entertainment, or is it? I don't know. So there's the question. Right, I'll catch you in the next one, or I might catch you later when I've done this. I'll show you what I've done.